Hey again, everybody. I am DJ Riley, one of the hosts from Boys on the Bench, and I am back with my top 5 NBA picks on the day of love. It's Valentine's Day, and there is a full slate of NBA games, and I'm excited to dive into these. But before we get started, let's take a look at how we did yesterday. We did end up going 2 of 3 yesterday, with Rudy Gobert and D'Angelo Russell being the only two players that hit for us. But then on the other hand, Shea, who was my pick of the day, ended up giving us a hook. He missed a free throw pretty late. Would have given it to us. He should have had this a long time ago. The first half, he really struggled to shoot. Second half, he started to light it up. So it was really close, whatever. Jaylen Brown did not have his best game. Jason Tatum kind of took over, and that was kind of that. Mikal Bridges was in that game as well. Boston was up by so much so late. It really should have been a blowout. Jaylen Brown wouldn't have hit, but that means that Mikal Bridges would have hit. We had this until probably, I think, Mikal Bridges made the last shot of the game. There was 20 seconds left on the clock. They gave an easy layup, and that was that. So we should have went at least 4 and 5 yesterday, but it was kind of a bad beat, is what it is. But we're moving on to the next day, which is today, where I have 5 awesome picks for y'all. But before we get into this, make sure y'all are subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, and getting notified anytime these videos are dropping. Now, in this video, you will hear me reference Daily Grind Fantasy, which is one of the best positive EV betting tools, guys, that you can use. And a lot of my picks today are sitting around that 53-54% mark, which again is what we're looking for whenever we're building these parlays on PrizePicks. It's long-term the more profitable bets that we can make, but I also have more reasons and justifications for my picks. So all of my picks, again, will be posted on my X profile. You can also find that in the link in the description. Now let's go ahead and jump into these today. My first pick that I have today for you is my pick of the day, and that's Luka Doncic going over 41.5 points plus assists. He does have a 2-game history versus the San Antonio Spurs team, where his most recent matchup was on December 23rd, where we saw him go for 49 points plus assists on only 32 minutes of play. And their other previous matchup, he had 43 points plus assists on 34 minutes of play. So we see that he's not getting a ton of play time here, but he's still hitting this mark. Now, Daily Grind Fantasy is giving this a 53.3% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 134. So again, we're looking for 54, 55%, but we're getting 53.3, pretty good in terms of positive EV. So love that there for him. Now, if we look at recent performances, he's hit this line in 2 out of his last 5, also 7 out of his last 10. Now, even if we go back and look at his last 30, he's hit this in 23 out of his last 30 games, which is 77% of the time. So he's been hitting this number at such a high mark this season. Luka's also been very dominant at home, which is a home game for him. He's hooked his last 2 home outings where he had just 41 points plus assists, but then he hit the 5 straight prior to those. So he's almost hit this in 7 straight home games for him. San Antonio Spurs have struggled this season, allowing bottom 5 numbers in points plus assists in all of the NBA. There is blowout potential here, which, again, scares a lot of people from taking this bet. But it really shouldn't, because Luka's had no problem clearing this line in their previous 2 matchups, where we saw him, again, only play 32 and 34 minutes. We're used to seeing him play 36, 37 minutes. He's also hit this line in 8 out of the last 10 games, where the Mavs have won by at least 10 plus points. So San Antonio Spurs versus the point guard position, points plus assists, they allow the 3rd most. So really love Luka here. Again, this is my pick of the day for today on this Valentine's Day. Trust Luka in this versus a very bad Spurs team. Now, moving on to the next pick, and that's Evan Mobley going over 22.5 points plus rebounds. Does not have a head-to-head history versus the Chicago Bulls team. So if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, they're giving us a 53.2% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 134. So again, another good play sitting here around that 53%. Now, looking at recent performances, he's hit this in 5 out of his last 5 games, so 5 straight, but he's also hit this in 6 out of his last 10. Now, where I really like him is we've started to see an increase in his minutes since returning from his injury these past 8 games, which is most likely the reason we've seen him hit this number in 6 straight games. Now, in games, if we're looking at where he's played at least 28 minutes, where we're starting to see him increase, his last game he had just over 27 minutes, but shy of 28. So assuming today we probably hit that 28-minute mark, he's hit this line in 15 out of 20 possible games this season. So he's hitting that at a very high rate, and he's coming off of a stretch where he's hit this in 6 straight games. Now, also, if over that 6 straight game span, we've seen him take at least 10 field goal attempts in 5 out of those 6 games, where he's also hitting 7 rebounds in 5 out of those 6 games as well. Chicago versus that power forward position, points plus rebounds, they're middle of the pack, allowing the 16th most. So again, really like him to go for 23 points plus rebounds in this game. Moving on to the next pick, though, I have Trey Mann going over 10.5 rebounds plus assists. Does not have a head-to-head history versus this Atlanta Hawks team. So if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, it's another 53.7% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 138. So again, another good play for positive EV here. Now, if we look at recent performances, however, he has hit this in 3 out of his last 5, but then also 3 out of his last 10. But it's hard to put anything really of value for him except these last 3 games where we've seen him hit this over in all 3 of those games. The reason I say that is he hasn't seen a ton of minutes outside of these last 3 games. Now, he has been with Charlotte for these last 2 games after being traded at the trade deadline, and he's really done a great job of commanding this offense where we've seen him have at least 7 assists and 4 rebounds in both of those games with him, meaning that average, he would have cleared both of these this line for both of those games. So right now, Atlanta ranks bottom 6 in both rebounds and assists in all of the NBA. They also play at a very high pace of play, leading to more opportunities for Mann to hit this mark. Also to mention, Atlanta is going to be without their top centers in Capella and Okongwu. They're both already ruled out with injuries, meaning that there's a lot of opportunities inside to score. Nick Richardson's going to have a mismatch on the inside, and I expect Mann to really just feed him. I mean, he's done a good job of commanding this offense, and I think that, again, that continues today. Now, if we look at how Atlanta has done versus the point guard position, rebounds plus assists, they've allowed the 3rd least, so they've been really good at stopping it. But again, Mann's game is not really to score. It's more of a passer than anything. So really love him here in today's matchup. Now, let's move on to the next pick that I have for you today, and that is Brandon Ingram going over 23.5 points. He does have a 1-game history versus this Washington Wizards team on December 13th, where we saw him go for 40 points on 31 minutes of play. This was without Zion in the lineup, and it's worth noting that Zion is currently listed as questionable with that foot injury that has been kind of bothering him over here this past week. So there's a potential that we don't see Zion again today, but even if we do, I still like Brandon Ingram in this matchup a lot. So if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, they're saying that this has a 51.7% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 125. Recent performances, he's only hit this in 1 out of his last 5 and 4 out of his last 10. So obviously he's not hitting this at a great line of 40% over these past 2 weeks. However, where I like him in this matchup is Washington has actually done a really good job at remaining competitive in most of their games, despite giving up the most points in all of the NBA. Meaning Ingram is due for high minute usage. He has a good opportunity to see a high minutes today, leading for more opportunities and being on the court and scoring the ball. Now, with that in mind, 4 out of the last 5 small forwards who have had 20-plus point lines have hit their over versus this Washington Wizards team. Washington versus the small forward position, points allowed, they've allowed the 1st most. So again, they are not good at defensively stopping these teams, but they're also good at going kind of tit for tat with the opposing team, meaning that the starters stay on the court longer. So really love Brandon Ingram in this matchup. He's done a good job versus this Washington Wizards team, again, scoring 40 points in their 1 matchup this season already. But that brings us to our last pick today, and that is Donovan Mitchell going over 5.5 assists. Does have a 1-game history versus the Chicago Bulls team on January 15th, where we saw him have 7 assists on 36 minutes of play. Daily Grind Fantasy is giving this a 54.3% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 140. So again, that is our first 54% chance of hitting play. And again, very good. Now, if we look at recent performances, he's hit this in 2 out of his last 5 and 7 out of his last 10. Now, if we also go look at his last 30, he's hit this in 22 out of his last 30, which is 73% of the time. Mitchell has been so elite at home this season, where we've seen him hit in 12 out of his last 15 home games. Chicago also allows the 7th most assists in all of the NBA, and 8 out of the last 10 shooting guards with 3.5 plus assist lines have all hit their overs versus the Chicago team. Chicago versus shooting guards, however, on the assist side, they allow the 10th least. So they've been pretty decent all year long. I mean, a top 10 team and assists allowed to the position. But Donovan Mitchell has been playing lights out over these last 30 games, really his last 10 games, and at home. Again, he's hit this line in 12 out of his last 15 home games. So love everything about Donovan Mitchell here. But anyways, everybody, these are my top 5 picks. As always, let me know in the comments which ones you're tailing, which ones you're fading, maybe again, which one that I missed. There's a big slate of games today on this day of love. But I wish nothing best for y'all. Hopefully y'all catch some NBA games today, and let's sweat these bets together. Anyways, best of luck. I will see y'all tomorrow.